Hello everyone, Malrang here, and today we are going to go over all the LEC roster changes for the summer 2025 season, and it is very exciting. That is because we have a ton of roster changes. Usually this would not really be the case. You wouldn't have that many changes, right? Because there were the splits worked a bit differently. Previously there was only 2 splits, now we have 3 splits, and you can change your players in between all of them. And since all the leagues have 3 splits, there's a huge opportunity for good changes. But because the summer season is the most important, we also have the most crazy and insane changes before the season. It's almost like another big offseason after the end of the year. And so let's dive straight into all these changes. First of all, let's quickly get the teams that did not make any changes out of the way. So in this video, we are not going to be talking about G2 Esports because the roster stays the same. We are not going to be talking about Giant X. We're not talking about Karmine Corp and not talking about Koi. Obviously the team that won the LEC, and also Team Heretics, you can see, kept their roster the same. So 5 teams remained unchanged. However, the other teams are absolutely spicy, and we are going to start first with the craziest one, and that is Fnatic. And Fnatic, I think, is the biggest surprise of the whole offseason. But let's first address this. You can see every single player has their change, or if it didn't change, that just the same player is written here. This is the Sheep Esports / transfers, so go check them out. But you can see Oscarinin is still not yet confirmed, and we know that from Sheep Esports that most likely Oscarinin is not getting changed, and that is the reason why I decided to already make this video talking about all the changes. However, there is a slight chance that something is cooking up, and that something could be very crazy. We saw this tweet by Yamato Cannon talking about all these crazy rumors, someone please leak it already, and then he deleted the tweet. So we don't know if something was supposed to go through and it's not going to happen, or what is happening, but there must be some reason why Sheep Esports did not yet confirm Oscar. So although he is most likely to be here, and I'm going to make this video with that in mind, I also want to talk about the possible changes. So one, the maybe less exciting, but maybe the one that was more known, would be that Fnatic would bring Wunder, because we know Wunder is a very good top laner and he does not have a contract. And already the one situation happened where he subbed in for Oscarinin, and they actually made it to Worlds thanks to having Wunder on the team. Also a very skilled, experienced player, still very great player, and I would love to see him on this team. But what I suspect that there's even a higher chance of happening is that we would see possibly Humanoid role swapping for a split and going to play a top lane in Fnatic, because we know Fnatic struggled with a top lane, and also they struggled with the Razork and Humanoid, the mid jungle duo. However, if Humanoid would decide to go top lane, he would actually have to try and have to learn and have to do better, because as we heard from Yamato Cannon, Humanoid is probably one of the most talented players in the whole league. His problem is his attitude and his motivation. He's so talented in this, he feels like he does not have to struggle that much. He feels like he does not have to, work that much. And also his attitude towards the game is not that great. And so Yamato Cannon was saying that perhaps now he gets some time off and he could reevaluate if he actually wants to play the game. But I feel like if he would swap to the top lane, I feel like he would actually struggle, and he would maybe find some passion and reignite that passion and try to, get better at the top lane. And I think now this season would be a really good practice for that, because you have other Korean top laners coming in. But I'll talk about more about that with the other teams. But okay, so possible Humanoid in the top lane. It's even crazy that I'm saying this. Possible Wunder, but most likely Oscarinin staying. However, look at this roster. You have Poby replacing Humanoid. So for those of you who don't know, Poby is 19-year-old mid laner from the LCK the LCK Academy League, from the T1 Academy team. and he is quite a bit of a meme. Everyone who knows him, everyone who watches Casual stream, Poby is the meme. You know, they draw this comparison between him and Thayger. You know, Thayger is the unkillable demon king, Poby is the killable demon prince, right? You know, all the roads lead to Thayger and some roads lead to Poby. So he's not very great, you know. All the other players evaluated him. We saw players like Nemesis evaluating Poby. We saw, let's say, players / coaches like Yamato Cannon, like Casual evaluating Poby. He is not a great player. However, he is a grinder and he has a passion for the game. So I saw some comments under my videos when I was talking about this huge change. People were saying, Humanoid, he was playing like the 8th best mid laner in the LEC, so any Korean import will be better than Humanoid, you know, it's gonna be better. No, mechanically this is totally a downgrade. Humanoid has not been playing like the 8th best mid laner. He had some motivation and attitude issues, but he's still definitely top 5, and if he locks in, maybe even the 2nd best mid laner in the league after Caps. But this is debatable. Obviously now we have mid laners like Vladi, like Jojo, maybe even Nuke and Jackies, you know, so the mid lane is pretty strong, but Poby is definitely a downgrade. However, mechanical skill is not everything a team needs, and if there's some issues, if there's some attitude, if there are some personal issues and so on within the team, sometimes you just need a change, and I think Poby is going to be an interesting change. So the Fnatic as a team, they are going to lose a bit of mechanical skill, and they are gaining a language barrier because there was all the players spoke English, and now you have Poby, and I don't know how his English is, right? So obviously that is a bit of a downgrade, but maybe now that they have a different mid laner and also there's like these barriers and so on, maybe the team will have to come together and solve these problems and really try to win. And I think that's exactly what Grabs wants, that's exactly what Duffman wants, and that's exactly what this team wants. I'm not going to speak about the fact that apparently these roster changes are governed by Dardo, who was supposed to be kicked, or he was announced as being kicked from the team, and that is the management. That is the person behind the scenes that everyone hates, and all the Fnatic fans hate. And now we see that actually most likely these roster changes are being led by this person. So I don't want to speak on that because it is also making me a bit mad personally. However, still I think that this roster is going to be extremely hype. Even just with Oscar staying in the team, I think this roster is going to be extremely hype. You can already see how many likes these changes got on the Sheep roster transfers. But personally, if we see someone like Wunder or someone like Humanoid, or I don't know if there is another possibility in the top lane, but if we see someone like Wunder or Humanoid in the top lane, I think the roster is going to be even more hype, and I would really love to see that. So personally, Fnatic, definitely a team I'm going to be watching for summer season. Definitely the team I'm going to be rooting for. Now, are these changes overall an upgrade or downgrade? They could be both. As I said, Poby is a bit worse than Humanoid, and I think getting a language barrier in your team is not that great, but I also believe that a change can sometimes be good, even if it's not a good change on paper. And for that reason, I actually believe that this might be good for Fnatic. And if not, then we'll just see a really, really cool Fnatic for one split. So that's that for Fnatic. Let's move on to a second really exciting team, and that is NaVi. So NaVi really made crazy changes to their roster. They bought out Rogue. So if you remember Rogue, in the league they had some financial issues and so on, and finally we get NaVi. So NaVi is a very well-known team, especially in CSGO, or like now it's called CS2, right? Counter-Strike, and some other games. But now they're getting into the League of Legends, and I love to see that personally. And they change their roster, and I think they change it in a really exciting way. So first of all, on the former roster, they had Adam, and Adam is staying in the top lane. I think this is a great decision because I think Adam was a bit jailed in this roster. I think he was the best player out of the 5 players, and so I'm really glad to see him stay. I think he got to struggle a bit, you know, he got to see that it's not that easy if your roster is not great. Previously, he played on Fnatic, which was a really good roster, with Bwipo changing to jungle to, you know, find space for Adam. And then that year that actually managed to go to Worlds. But now, you know, instead of Bwipo, he had Malrang in the jungle. And obviously all the other players were different. He even played on a BDS roster, which I also think was arguably a lot better. But now he got to struggle a bit on NaVi, and I think he maybe found some more appreciation for having a better team. And so it's really cool to see him stay. Other than that, we have Thayger. So Thayger is coming from Barça Esports from the Spanish League. They won the Spanish League, went to EMEA Masters final with Los Ratones and then lost to them. But overall, a very strong team. We saw it in the EMEA Masters, and Thayger was having a really good performance. And here's replacing Malrang, at least for one split. And personally, I think this is really cool to see, because I always like when some good players from the ERLs get a chance, you know, at least. And this is going to be probably just for one split. So this team we're only going to see for one split. And I think we're going to see a whole rebuild of NaVi for next year. But obviously, they're trying to save as much money on this rebuild and show as good of a performance for the summer season. And so we have Thayger stepping in. There were also some talks about bringing in Jankos, for example, which I think would be really cool, but that did not end up happening. Next up, we have Larssen. So Larssen had a massive contract. He was one of the top 5 paid players in the league, and I still think his contract lasted until like 2027. But actually, he could have just stayed on the bench and received a massive salary, but he actually decided to take a pay cut to stay on the team and not get replaced by NaVi. So for some reason, he wants to play, and I wonder why that is. Maybe, you know, maybe he believes in the new roster, and that is really exciting to see. But yeah, again, Larssen, a mainstay. He was playing for Rogue before they got bought out by NaVi for like 6 years. So this is very cool to see. And then we have Patrick being replaced by Handsome D. Personally, Patrick, again, a huge name of the LEC. He's been a veteran by now for so many years. But personally, I think it's really good to see him get replaced, because I think he was consistently the worst AD carry in the league for like at least 2 years. So nothing against Patrick, but we need better players, we need more excitement, and we have Handsome D, who is coming from the LFL, from the EC Upon Core, previously has been playing on BK ROG. This guy is absolutely a monster in the AD carry position. I was expecting him to join the league alongside Calist when Calist joined KC the same season. I think he maybe even got some offers, or at least from what I remember, some teams were interested in him, but in the end it didn't go through. I think it was Giant X and they picked up Noah instead of Handsome D. But personally, I think he's very strong, and people don't realize how strong this guy can be on a good team, because he was playing in the LPL, he was playing in the LCK, playing in the LFL, and everywhere he was just dominating. He was hands down a really good AD carry in the LFL, and in the LPL and LCK was like a middle of the pack. So obviously this is not like getting Gumayusi, or this is not like getting I don't know, someone else, but you know, it's something like getting Berserker, for example. When there was Berserker in NA, maybe not as hype, right? Obviously, because Berserker was just such a hyped rookie, but still, this is a massive upgrade in the AD carry, and the Thayger in jungler is like a slight upgrade. Now the support position is very interesting, because Execute is still signed with NaVi, and so they will have to pay him on the bench, but he's getting replaced by Malrang, who is role swapping to support. So I'm not quite sure why they're doing this. Obviously, they don't want to sign anyone else. They want to save money, especially on a role such as support, which we know is, well, technically the least skilled role, but having a good support is really important. Just look at Mickey X, just look at Alvaro, I mean, look at even Jun. So I think having a great support can make a huge difference on your team. But they are fielding Malrang, so I'm not sure if they think Malrang has potentially higher ceiling, but it's a strange choice to do for just one split. So personally, I think it's because Execute had some issues with some behavior issues. He wrote some offensive stuff into the chat in the game, and that's why he got punished by Riot, and he couldn't play in an official game, and he had to be subbed in by, I think, Malrang, and they had like Trick playing in the jungle or something like this. But basically they decide to go with Malrang instead. So we are going to see Malrang playing support. So that is also going to be pretty exciting, but personally I would prefer someone else in a support position, but maybe that's where we are going to see next year. So maybe next year Handsome D is going to stay on the roster, and we are going to see something more interesting happening with the roster. But overall, massive upgrade. I think this team is not going to be that last like it was. I think we're finally going to see Adam shine a lot more and Handsome D shine a lot more on a team that's a bit better. That is if Malrang steps it up in a support position. All right, let's continue. And let's continue on to SK Gaming. So SK Gaming is really strange to me, and let me tell you why. First of all, they promoted many players at the beginning, so beginning of the whole season, of the whole year, from the BDS Academy, because that team was just destroying the ERLs. They won the EMEA Masters and so on. And they promoted Genax, they promoted Reeker, they promoted Kedui. No, at the time they had Rahel actually. But Genax turned out not to be very good. Reeker already second time being the worst mid laner in the whole league. I do not understand this decision or why did this happen, but okay, they decided to replace these junglers. And so they got DnDn in the top lane, which I think is really good because obviously getting any Korean top laner, especially one that has experience playing in the LCK, is just going to be very good. But then they ended up getting Abedage in the mid lane, which, I mean, I still think he's all right. I would kind of compare him to maybe Larssen at this point, but I don't quite understand why they would not perhaps, already knowing that their team is not going to be that strong, maybe try to go and get some ERL talent, like let's say Oman from the BK Rock, currently the best team in the LFL, and same with the jungle. They originally had Boukada, then Team BDS decided to actually pay $200,000 for Boukada, and this is like unprecedented. I don't know why they would do this, but okay, they bought him out. But you still had so many options. You could have gotten Douglas, you could have gotten Rilech, also from BK Rog, right? You could have gotten XNS from the Turkish team. So many interesting junglers, but in the end you go with Skeens, and Skeens obviously is a huge name because he played in the LEC, he played in LFL, and whenever he played in LFL he did really well, but whenever he played in the LEC he actually did very poorly. And so I don't understand why you would bring in Skeens, but okay. The team coherence is so strange. They also let Rahel go, who was arguably their best player, and they're replacing him by Kedui, who again is just not playing that well. And they're keeping Loopy, another Korean support who played in the LTA South before. And again, I'm just not hype on any of these players. I love to see how DnDn does, because just seeing another ex-LCK player in the LEC is always really cool. And I think it's going to be really good. And I think it's going to be also a good practice for the other top laners to just go 1v1 against. So that's something I'm really hyped about. But to be fair, the rest of the roster just does not seem very good. And I think SK Gaming are going to be hands down the worst team in the LEC. And I hope they surprise me and show that that's not the case, but I just don't see that not being the case, basically. Next up, we have Team BDS, and Team BDS, again, one of the more exciting choices because there has been very crazy changes. So first of all, let's look at the mid lane and bot lane. Nothing changes here, and I'm glad it didn't, because their mid lane, their AD carry, and their support are all very good players, and I'm glad to see this staying. These changes staying, especially Ice. I mean, he is their star player. And now let's look at the jungle. So for some reason, everyone wanted to play with Boukada. Everyone wanted Boukada, and people felt like, or maybe, I don't know if it was teams or if it was the players, but just there was this general idea that Boukada is the best jungle prospect, and that's why they even paid $200,000 to buy him out, which is still, I just cannot really comprehend this. This is still really strange to me. And so they got Boukada, and I think that's a massive upgrade over 113, but they could also have gotten someone like Jankos, and I just don't see how getting Boukada is better than getting Jankos, especially if you have to pay so much for such a player, and you could just buy Jankos for like one split and you might have a shot even at Worlds. But for some reason BDS wanted to get Boukada, so I really hope we see this player and we see what he can show us, because I'm really interested in what was this all about. So I'm really expecting him to pop off, because this move just does not make sense to me. However, I still think it's a massive upgrade over 113. And so let's look at the top lane. So instead of Irrelevant, actually, I was skeptical. I didn't think they would change Irrelevant, but actually instead of Irrelevant, we are getting Rooster. And Rooster, for those of you who don't know, he's the top laner from the HLE Academy and the LCK, and he was a really, really good top laner. And some teams from the LCK actually wanted him to put him into the roster. So he was supposed to play in the LCK. So basically you can think of him as an LCK top laner, so something like DnDn, or maybe something like Kana. Obviously there are different circumstances, different level of experience, and different champion pool and so on. But still, you can think of him as an LCK top laner, and so is it an upgrade over Irrelevant? Yes, especially because of how Irrelevant played this season. However, I still think Irrelevant is a really good top laner who deserves a spot in the LEC, and I still think that probably he just underperformed this season, or he just really, really overperformed the season before. But I'm not sure what exactly is happening behind the scenes, so I'm a bit sad to see Irrelevant getting replaced. However, I still think getting Rooster instead of Irrelevant is a massive, massive upgrade. And so, with that in mind, I think Team BDS is actually the 5th strongest team in the LEC. Obviously, the top 4 is, in no specific order, is Fnatic, G2, KC, and Koi. KC won the first split, Koi won the second split, G2 has been consistently up there, Fnatic has been consistently up there, and these are always the top 4 teams in the playoffs fighting for the top spot. Until recently, it's been Giant X who has been the 5th strongest team, and I think if they had a different jungler and did not have Isma, and I think if they had like Closer playing, and possibly if they got like a better top laner, I also think still that they could have been the 5th best team. However, now seeing the changes of Team BDS, I think they are the 5th strongest team, and they actually have a shot in making it to the Worlds, because we know the top 3 teams, most likely, because there's a chance of getting a 4th slot in the Worlds, but for that someone would have to be 2nd place in the MSI, and I don't think that's happening with Gen G and Anyone's Legend and like the other teams like T1 and BLG and so on, and even FlyQuest, you know. So I don't think it's happening that we would end up getting the 4th slot, and so there's going to be 3 slots in Worlds, and the top 4 teams will have to fight for them. Koi, G2, KC, and Fnatic will have to fight for these top 3 slots, but Team BDS has a fighting chance now with this roster. If it clicks, if they do some good strategies, if they do some good preps, I think they have a good chance of getting into that top 3. And that is exciting, because the better the teams are, the crazier it is, and the better the practice all the teams get, and so the better the whole region is. And so all I just want, you know, I used to be a G2 fan for a long time. I'm not a fan of this roster. I was a huge Mickey X fan. They took him away, so then I was Fnatic fan. But also just seeing how good Koi and KC are, I'm also a fan of these teams, because I just like teams that play good, and I like teams that can do some damage. And I think BDS can definitely do some damage, and so I'm definitely going to root for BDS as well in the summer season. And the last team, although they only made one change, is Team Vitality. Now, Team Vitality only changed their support. This is their 3rd time changing their support. They started the first split with Hylissang. They changed him to Niski. So Niski quit being a mid laner. By the way, I still think he could return to mid lane. He's still better than perhaps Abadage, Larssen, Kamelu, Chayek. You know, he could role swap to mid lane in Team Vitality and still be a better mid laner. But okay. He stepped down from support because it probably wasn't working out very well, and now they're getting Flashy from the LFL Academy. Is Flashy good? Yeah. Is he great? I wouldn't say so, but let's see how Team Vitality is going to perform in the summer. Personally, I think their top lane is really good, Nako. I think Karzi is really good. He's being a little bit jailed in this team. And I think Chayek is just the middle of the pack or bottom of the pack, just not very good of a mid laner. And I think Flashy, you know, now they're getting him. He's okay. He's okay. Probably is going to be an upgrade over Niski, because Niski had just one split to kind of get into playing support. And although I think Niski had all the necessary prerequisites to be able to play support well, I still think it takes some time. Just look at, for example, Reckless playing in Lost Tones. I think now he's a really good support player, but it took him a long time to get there, and I still think he needs to learn a lot before he can be as good as some other support players. And so to truly master the role is actually not easy. Although the let's say the entry level to the role is easier than any other role, but to be truly a master and to be truly good at the role, it's not easy. You need many things. You need awareness of the map, you need, you know, the macro skills, the micro skills, you need to know your matchups, you need to have a huge champion pool, and so on and so on. So to actually satisfy all of this, it's not easy, and there's not many players who can do this well. And so Lincess has been a bit of a letdown for me, because he was very hyped up, obviously, by the coaching staff. He was also doing really well in solo queue. He was doing really well in the ERLs, but for some reason he's just not that great in the LEC. So let's see if that can change with another iteration of this roster. But most likely we are going to see some crazy changes in team vitality for the next season. But I'm going to make a whole video about that after the season is done, and I'm going to give you all my crazy speculations and all my crazy conspiracy theories and so on, and we'll see if I can predict what is going to happen next season or if I'm going to be totally off. But that's about it for now. I can give you also my very short tier list for those of you who actually made it this far, and that's where we're going to be ending it on. So let me think for a bit. We don't know yet who Fnatic top laner is. I'm not too hype on G2. I think they can do pretty well domestically, but I just think something is not right with the team, and I think if it doesn't click, I think it's not gonna go well. I think Koi is actually only gonna get better with Jojo and so on. So I'll say this: I think Koi is going to win. I think Koi is going to be number 1. Number 2, I'm gonna say Fnatic. I think Fnatic is going to step it up, and I think they are going to really show us, you know, their potential. And I think number 3 is going to be G2. Number 4, like closely missing worlds, I think is going to be KC. Not because the roster is bad. I think this roster is really crazy. I'm just not sure about the target mass. I think there's just something wrong going on with the team, like some weird vibes. But you know, this is just me. Like, this is just my predictions. Like, anything can change. This is just like stepping into summer 2024. But all these teams are extremely close. They could all be on the same tier. So Koi, Fnatic, G2, KC, and I have BDS. Then I'll actually say, ooh, now this is close. This is between NaVi and Giant X. You know what? I'll make it spicy. I'll say NaVi, then I'll say Giant X, then Team Vitality, then Team Heretics, and then SK Gaming. But all of this can change. This was just, I don't know, I thought for like 1 minute about this. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about all these roster changes, and most importantly, let me know what you think about Fnatic's situation. If you heard about some rumors, if you have some theories about the top lane, about the roster, let me know about everything down below in the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.